if I care to shift some of my beliefs, release, as we discussed about it, maybe some of my old beliefs and expectations that were put on me by people, long time ago, 40 years ago, maybe. Now I can release it and say, what do I want? What do I want to give to this world, to my family, to myself? How do I want to live these years? Asking these questions actually gives very interesting answers and opens new opportunities.
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident.
Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Anna Urnova. Anna is an award-winning career coach helping professional mid-career men stop being stuck, stagnant, undervalued, and burning out in a soul-sucking jobs. Get on a purpose and successfully pivot to thrive without starting over or going back to school. And even if they tried many times before and failed. Anna lives with her family in Berlin, Germany, and works globally. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Anna. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Hi, audience, and hi, Dwight. Thank you very much for having me on your show and for perfectly pronouncing my name just now.
Just for the people that are listening, especially the loyal listeners that have been on for a long, long time, and thank you to the new listeners and people watching possibly on YouTube channel. I'm finicky about people's last names. It's a frustrating thing for me. It's a me issue, obviously, but I just find it respectful to learn how to pronounce somebody's first and last name, right? Because at the end of the day, we may not want to admit it, but we like when people say our name and say it correctly, right? It makes us feel good, doesn't it, Anna? Right?
It's our name.
Yeah, it is. And, like I was telling you, the amount of people that pronounce heck impronounceably, because people overcomplicate my name though, right? Because it's in print. I don't know about over in Europe. I heard it lots when I was there last summer. But in Canada and in the US, I bet you my last name is said, literally the last research I did, about 80,000 times to 100,000 times a second, because it's used as slang, right? Everybody uses heck as a slang word instead of saying hell. I don't understand why saying hell's bad when saying my last name's better, but I digress. Just so those listening know, if you've ever wondered, I don't think I've ever talked about this on this show. My family is from Germany, and that's where Anna hails from, is Berlin, Germany. My family's from Germany, and that's where the last name Heck comes from. All my lineage, all my DNA goes back to Europe, right? So it's kind of neat. It's kind of neat. I've actually had the DNA testing done. It's kind of cool. So anyway.
23andMe?
Yes.
Me too. I actually went through that test to understand where I come from. Well, I know family history, but I had a challenge, kind of really like pinpointing my identity, and I'm in identity work with my clients. So I'm struggling. I mean, we'll talk about it later. So, I basically went to 23andMe thinking, guys, maybe you tell me. And actually it was helpful. It did help me.
Oh, it helps a lot.
Yeah, it helps a lot.
I'm shocked how 23andMe, for those listening, if you're not familiar, it's like Ancestry, but I actually like it better. I did quite a bit of research before I started using 23andMe. A bunch of my adult kids have it. All of a sudden, I'll get an email. I haven't gotten something in months. I'll get an email and it'll say, you've just had this person that falls in this part of your tree. They're like 5th, 6th generation away. And see, my family, my dad's side of the family, lived in Russia for 100, just about 150 years. Before the Bolshevik Revolution, they fled to Canada and the US. They got attracted to go to Germany. They were given free land to come over and teach people how to farm, because Russia was, well, Russia still is a third world nation. It's still starving its people. So my great grandparents would have been that went there. My great grandpa Peter, I think that was his name. It slips my mind at the moment. And they were there, and they escaped just before the revolution happened, before communism became full board, and they fled to Canada and the US and became first generation Canadians, most of them, some in the US as well. But Ancestry and me showed the fact that some of my ancestors obviously met up with people that are Russian. So there's, and even a German that my 10 surviving uncles and aunts, like my dad's brothers and sisters, because he's one of 18, the German they speak, there's Russian infused in it. And I didn't realize when I was a kid, because I went to go take some German courses, never did finish them. So don't bother, I can't speak German. I took some courses because I wanted to learn how to speak it. And some of the words I was saying to the instructor, some of the words they were saying, and that's not German. I'm not even sure what that is. So we started researching. No internet back then, because I was in my teen years, and found out they were Russian. So then I asked my dad, he says, "Are you sure?" "I don't think so." Then my grandpa was still alive at that time. I asked him, he says, "Oh yeah." He says, "How could you not? Right? We're living in a Russian community, teaching Russian farmers how to farm, and we're integrated in a local community. So of course," he says, "they took on some of our words." It was, it was multicultural, which I thought was really cool. And then when I introduced myself to 23andMe, I learned more about my history and seen the ties. Whereas my mom's family all stayed there, except for some immigrated to Canada, about a half of them, right? And otherwise, my dad's, they ended up all over the place. Russia, even one side of our family went from Germany to South America to help them learn how to farm. Yeah, my grandma, my grandma, my dad's mom was born in Buenos Aires, South America. Her family went there to teach them how to farm. They were always bringing people over from Germany because of their intelligence, right? And they were very good with the land and farming, and good with people. So why wouldn't you want to, people to immigrate from those countries, especially Germany?
That's amazing. Really
being
amazing.
my family heritage, love Germany. So anyway, so we'll go on. One of the things that I focus, and people listening are probably wanting me to get to the point to this, because they're used to me starting off with, is people's origin story. As we talked about before I hit record, it's very important for us to understand somebody's origin, because we learn people in such a superficial way, especially if they're going to coach, like you coach and educate and train people at a very high level. But when we're superficial as a coach, because I do a lot of coaching too, and when we're superficial, we only get that superficial back. We don't get that real nitty gritty, that connection, that heartfelt connection where we can really truly make a difference in people's lives. At least I believe that. So if you could do me a favor so that our listeners and people watching could better know you, please share me your origin story from your earliest recollections to where you are today. Share whatever you'd like, as long as you'd like. My listeners are waiting, and so am I. Thank you.
Yeah, wow, exciting. First of all, thanks for your story. I feel really inspired, and a little bit vertigo from, your family traveling all over the world. But it's
Oh my gosh,
it kind of reminds me of my confusion as well with my origin, because I have 5 lineages, let's say, in me, and 23andMe confirmed it. I knew that before. So on my last name that you struggled to pronounce before we started the podcast, but you pronounced it perfectly just now, it actually comes from the Russian side, where my father's side, where I have Russian and Jewish lineages. Jewish coming from Lithuania, which is like a Baltic state that was part of Russia at some point, but was independent now. And then on my mother's side, I have German and English and Irish lineages. So and that's where, and I started to ask this question, who am I? Well, I've known I had this lineages probably most of my life, let's put it this way. But it did not make it less confusing, let's put it this way. And so I really was always curious. So how do they integrate? Because if you look at it, all these are, if you imagine that these are 5 nations, right? That these 5 nations, they were not always at peace with each other. There actually was a lot of turbulence among these 5 nations. So in a way, I always felt like maybe there's a little bit of tension among these heritages and the messages that I have to somehow integrate, and the cultures and you know, the way of living, so to say, values. Maybe that's one side of it. On the other side, I felt there is like a unique mix, and maybe I always imagined almost like there is a family table, round table, and these 5 nations sitting around the table, and how in me they uniquely actually connect, and in my family they find peace, they find love. There's, I mean, how these people connected, they fell in love, and war had to do with it as well during the war, and you know, when people fell in love with the enemy, right, and had a child who is part one country, part one nation, part the other nation. So but this story of divide was very strong in my family, because I was born in Soviet Union, not even Russia, Soviet Union, which was there. And parts of my families and my grandfather and grandmother were German and English, and they were met during the war and then ended up in Soviet Union. Long story, not for this podcast, but they were completely cut off. My mother was born in Soviet Union. They were completely cut off from their English, Irish, and German families. Like my grandmother and my grandfather both, they had children from previous marriages, and they never seen them again. They never seen them after the war, right? So there were a lot of really, really tragic cutoffs. So when people died without seeing each other, and back then, unfortunately, there was no Zoom. Right, so the phone calls were like really tough, and mostly traced by KGB and things like that. So anyway, it was really a tragedy. And then of course the Europe was divided with the wall. Even Germany was divided. So I had German families on family people on both sides of the wall as well, who were among themselves divided, right? And so my grandmother and grandfather, for instance, died without seeing their families again, right? But my mother had a chance, and most of all, I had a chance when I was a teenager. The wall fell, and I was making those trips back to the families of people that I've known as my grandparents, right? And meeting their, for instance, my grandfather, who was English, and he was born in Liverpool, and he had a very big Irish family, immigrants from Ireland to Liverpool. And I think he had 7 sisters and brothers. 2 of his brothers were still alive when I could come and visit them. They were old people, but they were still alive. And that was amazing, because they haven't seen him since they were teenagers. No, not teenagers, probably in their early 20s. They were teenagers, but he was 21. They were like 17, 18 or something when the war started, and they joined the army. And so they basically had me as a messenger come, and they were like, how was he? Tell us about him. You know, what was he like in the family? And I had to like tell them what I could, you know, about my grandfather. And I just could, as a teenager, I remember I just felt it in my heart how important it was for these people to connect
Oh,
to,
yeah.
you know, the bloodline. And they also received me. I mean, suddenly like a 19-year-old comes for dinner, and they literally like adopted me emotionally. Like I would come and visit, and then unfortunately both of them died you know, several years after. But their wives, who were not even blood relatives, so to say, I kept in touch. Like this, my great aunt, basically the wife of my grandfather's younger brother. I kept in touch with her until her death, which was 2020, you know, so it was just like a couple of years ago, unfortunately. So that was these incredible reconnections. Also in Germany as well, like seeing my great uncles, older brothers, half brothers of my mother, who lost their mother very early on. And then they were you know, how they coped with that, how they told their story, and that we could meet and we can talk, and they directed me at where our family came from in Germany, so I could go and visit those places. And I don't know, you're in Canada, right? So maybe it makes me feel, think of salmon, you know, the salmon that travels back to the origin. You know, for the important parts of their lives. I believe there's something, it was some of that call of blood that you have to kind of go. I literally felt myself as a teenager kind of going and reconnecting, almost like recollecting parts of who I am together, because I couldn't work just being one piece of the puzzle. I had to put all the 5 pieces together somehow. And 23andMe actually helped as well, because they I don't know how it was your report, but my report was really helpful, because they said, well, look at the if you look around the North Sea and also Austria, so Baltic Sea rim of those seas, this is where all your family comes from, they said. And I looked and I thought, that's true. This is where the Jewish and the Russian and the German and the English and the Irish actually clustered around that place. So I'm a Northern European. I'm a Northern European. And I have about roughly 50% West Northern European, 50% North European. I don't know why, but somehow reading that felt extremely comforting to me, and kind of, yes, that's who I am. That's where I come from.
It's a grounding, right? It grounds us.
Very
It gives
grounding,
us,
yes.
a life is all about purpose, right? And part
Mm.
of understanding our purpose and living a purposeful life. Again, those listening or watching, you can still have a purposeful life and not know your specific origins, but it does help. It helps you understand where you come from. It helps you understand why maybe you have these little idiosyncrasies. Maybe it's something that's come from many generations and passed down. Simple little phrases, simple little comments, mannerisms, body language. Like I've seen and heard it all. And somebody will say to me, you know, your great uncle or your great aunt or whatever used to do that, and you know, you reminded me of them, right? Something I might have said, and you don't even realize how strong genetics are, right? And how things can be learned through multiple generations just through taught learned behavior, right? So it's amazing. So at that point, you learned about your bloodline, and where did you go from there? What was your childhood like?
Very turbulent. Very turbulent. Well, because I'd say my mother probably always felt quite isolated, you know, because she didn't have a bigger family where we were in Soviet Union. Well, it was my father on the Russian and Jewish side. He had a big family. But once my mother's parents passed, you know, she was completely on her own, so to say, which is really hard for me even to fathom, you know, that you have no family, and the separation from the rest of the world. So until the world opened, she had no family, and then when the world opened, she suddenly had all this family. And that was really interesting dynamics there. And let's say that contributed to maybe how I saw myself, and how I had to also balance, you'd say in my family. Basically, what I realized as a child, which I see with my clients as well, by the way, as a child, maintaining the order somehow in peace in your family of origin is very important. The child will do anything to support that order, because the thought of losing that, you know, vessel where we growing up is the scariest thing. It's as if someone tells you, you know, tomorrow the earth will explode. I mean, it's as terrifying to a child. So to me, my mother and father were both fiery and very ambitious individuals, and they fought a lot. My father had a drinking problem as well, so they fought a lot all the time. There was a lot of fights. And I remember, so as a child, as a child, of course, that terrified me. And I remember that I think all day long, and probably even at night, I was always thinking about how to keep this vessel together. Not to fall apart.
A lot of pressure on a young person.
lots of pressure. But I literally remember how I walk to school and I'm preoccupied with, like, you know, how to make this team work, how to make this work. Yeah, and funny enough, of course, that was traumatizing. That was very hard. Always I'd be feeling that we are on the verge of falling apart as a family. We hardly making it. There was this emotional aspect. There was also financial aspects. My both my parents were scientists. They struggled financially. My father was in debt to his larger family, all that. So and it was traumatic. Now these days we call it traumatic. Back then it was a normal normal childhood, but now we call it traumatic. But now actually as I entered my midlife years, so to say, and I started to question certain things, I started to see how that actually gave me skill sets and competencies that I'm using now as a coach. I swear. And in my executive career, I used those competencies. When I was a child, they were unconscious, but I always had to read the room. I had to understand, father and mother, what mood they are in, what's working. Mother would tell me her story. Father would tell me her story. I would have to help them reconcile somewhat. So that's what coaches do. That's what I later did as a team coach. That's I later helped executive with conflict resolution, right? That's how I help my clients also, by listening to their story, reconciling and so on. So in a way, now I'm using those skill sets, but back then they were more survival, surviving the trauma, so to say. But
Well,
now
it's important
yeah.
though for us to know somebody's origin when we're dealing with them, right? As a client, they become friends.
Actually,
The more we listen, the closer they become to us, right? And the better service we can give them. So I like that.
well, I believe, right, it's even more than that. I believe as a coach, I actually ask my clients, I give them a structured, let's say, form that they can tell me about their past story of origin. Why is it important? It's not just that, yes, it's nice to get someone to know better, but it's not just that. I believe that at those early years, we actually closest to the essence of who we really are in this world and why we're here. It's all given to us back then. But because of the family of origin turbulence and the primarily say objective of family of origin of keeping us safe, right? They first of all need to keep us safe. Second of all, they need to socialize us in the community, in the collective where we grow up, right? Which is also about safety, but also about then succeeding, right? And competing with others. So it's like you arrive with your essence, right? But it's raw. You cannot use it right away as it is in the outside world and succeed. So the family of origin is needs to do some work on it, but the primary objective is safety. So they start kind of, merging, molding you and working on you, right? And socializing you, forming you, so that how they see will, serve your safety and also help you integrate better in the collective. And then you basically get socialized. And then you go on and on and on. But I believe at midlife, what happens is that if for whatever reason that the early socializing didn't really utilize your essence, so to say, in the right way, then at midlife you would need to actually undo some of that work and integrate your essence back, because this essence is integral to you being on purpose and living a happy and fulfilled life. If you're not really being a human being, experiencing this life and serving others from that essence of who you really are and why you're here, you will always have this feeling of being not fulfilled and a potential being not realized.
Yeah,
I hope I'm explaining myself clear.
Oh, you're doing great.
Okay,
Yeah, no, you're
okay.
doing great. The origin is an anchor to our lives, and
Yeah.
I know a lot of clients that I've sat down with over the 21 years that I've been doing life coaching and financial planning with people. It starts out with their life and getting to know them, and I find that if they can't answer the story what their life monsters have been to get to where they're at, where they feel helpless, don't know how they're going to pay their bills, don't know how they're going to achieve, even a family vacation, maybe they haven't gone in 10 years and stuff like that.
Mm.
It always goes back to the root of their origin. Well, some
Yeah.
people, when I talk to them, they don't know their origin. Maybe they were adopted and they know the origin of their adoptive
Mhm.
parents, but they still feel left out and lost, right?
Abandonment, yeah.
Yes, they do. And
Mm.
and they may not even know how to identify that, though. They identify the fact that they feel abandoned and they feel it's like a hole in their soul. They just don't understand. And when we have conversations, some of them will go, well, I really don't. I know this about my family that adopted me, but I don't know anything about my biological family. I don't know where they came
Mm.
from. I don't know this.
Mm.
And the first thing I suggest now, because of technology, is 23andMe or Ancestry, right?
Yeah.
I've helped people even figure out. I said, this is where you go. This is how you do it. It's well
Mm.
worth the money. This is what's good. And who knows? Maybe you'll have one of your family members reach out to you, right? You never know,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
give them, I've given 23andMe permission for people to reach out to me if they want to, right? If
Mm.
they want to email me.
If that's how people feel, right? Because I'd say some people may not want to reconnect with their families, and that's fine
Exactly.
too.
Yeah.
And that's fine too. Right? Well, for me, it was important. I just felt that somehow I literally felt like I'm putting the puzzle together. I have to, and there's a missing piece, and it would really, I would feel an urge to go there and to somehow visit the place or visit the grave if I could, or visit relatives, or listen to the story. I really felt an urge, but actually then it kind of there was the point where I felt it was enough. It was enough for me, that I've collected enough, and now I feel like I have a sense of who I am and where I come from, and then I don't need to, because to be honest, it's a never-ending story, right? Our past is like a
Well,
never-ending
yeah.
story. And then I felt, okay, then I could release this need to know, and then I could already more focus on who I am and what I'm doing with it going forward.
Which
Yeah, but
is
I
what,
do, yeah,
which is good,
yeah.
right? And at the end of the day, you're right. Not everybody wants to know, but sometimes people have convinced themselves so. In multiple conversations, I've had people over months, and all of a sudden they do want to know more about their life. They never really were challenged to think about it, right? So yes, there is people that don't, but many people don't realize that they do want to know, because nobody's ever said it, giving them, I guess, to give ourselves permission, to give them permission, to give themselves permission to go and search out their lives. Like I know quite
Yeah.
a few, for an example, I know quite a few people that were adopted, and within our family structure, and they want to know stuff about their family, and I've encouraged them, go do this, go
Yeah.
do that. My oldest, for an example, I use her as an example, love her to pieces. She's not biologically my daughter. When I met my now ex-wife, she had a little girl, 2-year-old, and I've encouraged, and she didn't really know a lot about her family, and I encouraged her to research, find out. And because of that, she, as an adult, she's an older adult now, she's 38, she connected with her biological family. Now she's got a bunch of other siblings that she hangs out with. Not all of them accepted her, but a lot of them did, right? And she said it helped her ground her, and she thanked me repeatedly for not being so insecure that I'd tell her not to. I encourage people to research their past if they want to. I'm not going to push people to do things that are uncomfortable for them, but I know for her, I use her as an example. It really made her feel a sense of peace, right?
Yeah. Forgiveness as well. I think there's acceptance and forgiveness, because especially if, like, what you tell the stories about people being abandoned. I've also dealt with abandonment in my life, and then I saw, for instance, this story of our grandparents basically abandoning their earlier marriages after. I mean, and you sometimes, not sometimes, I think all the time, people have a story about that. And the way we are as children, we are very narcissistic, and we always interpret everything as it's our doing. It's of our doing. So if we abandon, there must be something wrong with us, right? So why else? And that's a very dangerous story to carry. And a lot of these stories are unconscious, subconscious, right? So people don't go around and tell the story about how they were abandoned as kids, right? But subconsciously there is this story. Well, why would someone abandon me? That's the only explanation, is because I wasn't good enough, right? As
Well, and they have a
kids,
hard time with relationships then too. I find that not everybody does, but the ones that really it centers in their soul, they have a hard time keeping any form of relationship.
because
And
you
they're
never
very
trust anyone.
and they're standoffish and they're very distant, right? And doesn't mean
Avoidant.
they're great people, but there's
Yeah.
again trauma that's caused that,
Trauma. It's
right?
attachment trauma. It's avoidance style. And the worst thing about it is that if there's usually a story attached to it, and it's a story about you not being good enough, that you blame yourself for being abandoned. Because I mean, as a child, you don't see any other reason. But when you go and investigate, especially as a grown-up, when you go and investigate the people's stories and histories and how it all happened, sometimes you realize it was no one's fault. It's just no one's fault. For some reason, people didn't cope with having a child, for instance, right? It was no one's fault. And generally that they actually tried to do their best, but they failed. And it's not your child's fault, right? And
Acceptance so allows people to move
acceptance,
forward. Acceptance
exactly, and
allows us to move
forgiveness.
forward.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
And really at the end of the day, the biggest forgiveness we have to give isn't necessarily against those that we feel have abandoned us or wronged us. It's ourselves for allowing
Yes.
it to control our mindset and our emotional state. We beat ourselves up far too often in life, and we don't look in the mirror and go, you know what, I'm worthy. This happened.
Yeah.
I forgive myself for letting it trap me for a day, weeks, months, years, right? It's never too late to give a heck, right? It never is.
No.
Even those listening, I have people that I do have a listening audience, by the way, in Germany. So those that are listening, it doesn't matter where you're from, what country you're from. We all have issues of wanting acceptance and wanting to feel connected. And even the reason I bring up Germany as part of the demographic in Germany, one of the episodes I haven't looked in a long time, there was somebody in their 70s that said it was from Germany that was listening to my show. So if that person's listening to my show, you want to learn more about life, because I have everybody and everything on here in regards to helping people with their mental health, their physical health, their financial, their spiritual. I've had yogis on, I've had everything, right? It doesn't matter to me as long as they want to uplift and help. So that 70-year-old person, right, once likes my show, maybe they're looking to elevate their game. The reason I bring it up is it doesn't matter what age you are. You can always decide, hey,
You can always give a heck.
yes, you can have that person. If you look at the longevity of my dad's side of the family, his one aunt lived till she was over 100 years of age in Canada, right?
Well
so
done.
that 70-year-old could live another 30 years, and why not live the last 30 years of your life to the best of your ability, right? It's okay to pivot. It's okay to want to grow and change, right? So
and that's actually why I do what I do, because I do believe that midlife is the point we actually decide on whether we'll have a great second and third act, or whether the rest of life will be like a quiet desperation and this, let's say, decline.
yeah, that hamster wheel effect.
Yeah, I do
Living
see
on a
that
hamster wheel.
midlife is giving this opportunity to reconcile, release certain things, and then really more become your own person, really. Yes, lineage is great, legacy is great, inheritance, family, it's all great. But at the end of the day, each of us have our own dream on our heart, and we give our heck our own very unique way. And I do believe that the midlife gives the opportunity. It's almost like a last call, maybe not last, but one of the last calls where you can really shift and pivot, and I call it upgrade. Get an upgrade somehow of your life experience, right? So that living on your terms, serving the world on your terms, enjoying your life on your terms. Yeah. I do believe people who solve their midlife crisis in a more constructive way, see it as an opportunity to grow, they have a more enjoyable later life. Let's say, second half of life, so to say.
Well,
Rather than
their health's better too, though. Even a person's health's better when you have your mental and emotional state able to leave that quiet desperation. I talk about that and use those words all the time, quiet desperation. You are in a hospital less. You're not feeling you're able to socialize better. Your actual circle, whether it's 2, 3, 10 people, you're actually connected more because you're going to attract people that are like you, that are in a better mood. You're happier. I look at my parents and some of their friends and their health issues. My parents are in their 80s and still relatively very healthy. They're always active. They're always upbeat. Right. A couple days ago, they live in a farming community. A couple of days ago, they come up to the capital where I live in Edmonton, and they were hanging out with one of my daughters and their great grandkids. So my grandkids and made supper for everybody, and we visited for only about 3 hours. But that keeps them going. And then again, their mental state of wanting to always be active has helped them. And yeah, so what do you want your third or fourth quarter of your life to be like is very admirable, right? For you to want to help and assist people to do that.
And part of why I'm doing what I'm doing is because, for instance, in my family, on my father's side, first of all, my father is not around already for quite a while. He died at 65, which is sudden. And at the same time, his older brother lived well into his 80s, and his father, my grandfather, lived into his 80s, and his cousins. And and my father, even before he died, he already was not quite alive, not quite himself. The vitality was not there, and it really made me wonder why. I mean, this is the same family, this is the same gene pool, right? Why these people live well into the 80s, enjoying being productive. They also, like, the family, there's the ones, the men are productive, like, well, I mean, until they write books, they socially productive, but not my father. And I do believe that this has to do with midlife, and how they navigated midlife, and how he navigated midlife. And that's interesting. I then also, wherever I have a question, I'm become obsessive. So I will be like diving into research and reading other people's PhDs and books and everything, right? Apart from doing my own observations. And what I notice is that basically the midlife crisis, some people are more conscious about dealing with it, but some people are just given something like a health challenge. Like, for instance, in my father's part of the family, a lot of men who lived well into the 80s and so on, they had some sort of a life threat midlife. My grandfather even had near-death experience. My uncle had a really serious heart operation. We didn't know if he would get out alive of that. And those serious health threats often make men really think about their life and the meaning of life and the purpose of life, and when they get out of it on the other side, it changes their trajectory. So they didn't ask for it, but it served. But with my father, it was not. He actually never. I don't think he ever spent a day in a hospital his entire life, and then it was boom, and the light was switched off for him. He did not have a second chance. Right. And I believe that there was part of it was just like the midlife crisis, which was there. He did not resolve it. He just tried to keep it together, but he somehow could not really embrace it as an opportunity. That's what I observed. And that really triggered a lot of my curiosity. And I started, reading more about it. And the more and more I do see that there's an amazing opportunity there, specifically for men, because women navigate the midlife differently. There's different challenges, but for men, midlife is a very important point where men can actually unleash a lot more, and they can show a lot more they have a choice, let's put it this way: either be productive and have an amazing second act, leave an amazing legacy, and, as you say, enjoy your grandkids and great grandkids, and give and actually enjoy that as well. That's the thing, having impact and joy. Or a kind of a functioning, but also kind of settling for less and accepting that, okay, now it's going downhill from here. That's what kind of comments I get from men. Sometimes I share some articles and things, and it's like, yeah, it's all going downhill from here. That's like a 52-year-old man.
Well, that's a cop out. statement though,
Yes,
right?
yes, that's an acceptance of that's
Or we
it for
can't
me.
we can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? Some of these phrases that have been around my whole life, as myself though, I've gone through my own midlife crisis. However, it was not due to not being fulfilled. It was a loss of a family member. I lost a granddaughter and back in
Oh, I'm sorry.
2017. Thank you. That put me in a funk, right? Put me in a funk for almost 2 years. And a period of time, it forced me to evaluate where I was at and what I truly wanted out of my life, what I wanted out of business. It made me reevaluate my core values that I live by and realize that I had these core values that I had let slip away, that I wasn't following, like my roadmap for how I was going to deal with life, right? What was my priorities? And I find many men, what happens with women too, but men know specifically, it's easy for us to get stuck in that hamster wheel and we get caught in this pattern and we forget about the journey of life. We forget about our faith. We forget about our families and we just focus on work. Everything's about showing up to present ourselves to society, our families, that we've created something, we've designed something, we're successful. And those that or there's people that are stuck that never truly achieve success in their mind's eye, and they're stuck. They live that life of quiet desperation. And you know what? You mentioned midlife crisis is common, that it is not normal for men to be stagnant, unhappy, and unfulfilled in mid-career. What have you seen are the reasons that cause men to drift into their own midlife crisis? Like, what are some of the specific reasons, tangible things?
Well, reasons is midlife. It's like, you have kids, right? And grandkids.
Yeah.
Right,
5 kids,
So,
5 grandkids. Yeah.
wow, okay. So you're a very experienced man there. So you know that kids have crisis, right? It's like 1 year crisis. There's like 3 year crisis. The kids become unbearable at 3 years old. 7 year crisis. Like we all know that about kids. Well, the humans continue to have crisis. I mean, we have crisis when we like around 21, then we have 30. Midlife is the normal human time of crisis. So what's the meaning of crisis actually? It means that there is a capacity for more, but somehow there is lack of understanding and meaning of how to proceed. So in a way, that by midlife, think about it, man has accumulated incredible amount of experience and skill sets and really, I mean, multiple educations or businesses or career projects, successes, failures, family, relationships, right? Kids usually already, maybe even grandkids, right? So there's so much already been accomplished. And the mid means that now there's time to look at the time that's left and think, okay, what do now I want to do with all this accumulated? And there's actually, even though the crisis is common, and I believe it's unavoidable, it's just given, if it's given, because it's a time in human development. Though what I do with it now is really an opportunity, because I can just continue the way I continue, right? Which is often actually what men find at midlife is that they've been living so far to fulfill other people's expectations. One tip I'd give, if I ask guys, okay, why are you doing what you're doing now? They often use the word should. Well, because I should pay the bill, I should take care of my family, I should do this, I should do that. Well, the word, wherever we use the word should, it always means there's someone else's expectations that drive our behavior. It's not us. It doesn't come from within ourselves. It doesn't come from our heart, doesn't come from our blood, doesn't come from our stomach, even our head, right? There are two more reasons. You can also say, because I can. Well, I've always been I don't know, an accountant. I know how to do it. So it comes easy, so I do it. Okay, that's fine. That's better. That's at least your own head. But the third is actually because I want to. And that, when you say that's because I want to, that's actually comes from your essence. That's why you're here, Dwight, right? Because you want and my want and someone else's want, it will be different, right? And the paradox there is, men always at midlife often say like this to me. They say, for instance, well, why I do it? Well, I want what I want. I want to spend time with my kids. I want to travel to these amazing locations, and I want to, I don't know, be a digital nomad, and I want to witness my daughter getting married, and I want to see my son, have his first kid, something like that. But what they're doing in reality is they're missing all those moments because they're working and being on business trips, right? Or something else. Or when they're there, they're not entirely present because they are ruminating about the, restructuring that's happening in the office and what their boss said. That's what a lot of men complaining to me about. They say, I'm not there, I'm not present. I seem to be doing all this to be with them, but I'm missing all these points because I believe I should be doing something else. So
They're
the should
missing the
gets in.
journey. They're missing their journey of life.
Exactly.
They don't
But
know how to
then,
disconnect.
but
Yeah.
and we all taught, I think the men taught to self-sacrifice. They self-sacrifice. It's normalized that you have to sacrifice somewhat, and happiness, maybe fulfillment, being relaxed, being playful with your kids or grandkids, seen as maybe something that easily could be sacrificed because they should, right? Part of me actually thinks, I don't have a proof to that, but I do believe that partly this has to do with program, that one of the archetypes, let's say, that men are grown to represent are warriors. I mean, through generations. I mean, not that long ago. I mean, the human survival was about wars, right? And men were always taught to be warriors. And even men who were maybe went to corporate or finance, there's still a lot of warrior mentality there. If you talk, I mean, the language, the strategy, the enemy, the achievement, the advancement, the using of force, aggression, competition. There's a lot of these warrior, let's say, archetypal features. And I believe that the problem with that archetype, even though we love them dearly, the warriors, that they are noble, they are amazing, they're inspiring, that they do not have a program for the second half of life for one simple reason. The warrior is not supposed to have second half of life, right?
They're gone.
They're not such a thing as well. A warrior in his 60 or his 70. There's no program for that. And so the more men sort of realize, hey, I want more of. I have another 20 years ago, I actually had a client who is in the military, okay, in the US military. And he told me he was counting days and weeks and months to retire, and he would retire from military at 46. And then he said one day he woke up in cold sweat one night, realizing, oh my God, 46 and I will be free. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? He had no program for that. Yeah.
No purpose. No purpose.
No purpose. Yes. So I will have at least 20 years to work. But what am I going to do? And he said, it just became overwhelming. And he said, I definitely don't want to soldier through my days, right? I want to do something meaningful. And I think that's not just the army guys and not just warriors. It's that all men kind of faced with that challenge at midlife that, hey, I've done sacrifices, done a lot, been to a school of hard knocks, achieved a lot. And now there is an opportunity to actually give back, share my skill sets, share my experiences, share my talents, invest into next generations. That's what actually men want. Men genuinely want to leave a good legacy to their kids. They want, to have a better climate, better planet. They want to be remembered as good men. Right. And that's what the second half of life about. So the crisis it's not about, oh my God, crisis, I have to avoid it. How do I avoid it? No, it's about, okay, crisis, welcome crisis. It means there is more available to me if I care to see it. And if I care to pivot, if I care to shift some of my beliefs, release, as we discussed about it, maybe some of my old beliefs and expectations that were put on me by people long time ago, 40 years ago, maybe. Now I can release it and say, what do I want? What do I want to give to this world, to my family, to myself? How do I want to live these years? Asking these questions actually gives very interesting answers and opens new opportunities.
Is this part of your, you literally work with men, obviously, like you had put in what I was reading, you managed to get out of your own soul sucking 9 to 5 and have been helping clients find their purpose using a simple 5-step formula. You've probably mentioned some of it already through our conversation, but what specifically is that 5-step formula? Could you
I
explain a
actually
little bit
did.
of it?
I didn't think about it, but I did, of course, because, well,
Well, I
one
heard
of
some
these,
of it. Yeah.
yeah, one of it is definitely you got to get on purpose. And purpose comes from aligning to your essence. Why am I here? And it sounds terribly existential and maybe even scary and irrelevant, but it's not. And the purpose, it needs to be something that actually makes your whole body tick and actually unleashes your energy and gets you on, to be in flow. A lot of men come to me and say, I think I worked on my purpose. I think I nailed it. And they give me some sort of a mission statement that they've engineered in their mind, or maybe copy pasted from somewhere else, you know. But I say, does it make you tick? What do you mean? Well, do you really want to wake up in the morning? It's like, I can't wait to do it, right? Do you imagine yourself really like being on fire and passionate, and do it even no one pays you, no one even sees you? Well, not sure. Well, then it's not purpose. The purpose is something that you literally would do anyway. If now they tell you, right, you don't have to work, don't show up, leave you alone, no expectations, you will be doing that, right? That's very confusing and say, but how do I get paid for that? Well, that's already different question. But the first, you need to understand what makes you tick, what makes you be in flow, what is the best, what's the best way your energy flows, right? And that's what purpose. So and that's why you're here. You are here to share that essence with the world and the people around you. Okay. So that's number one. Second, already, then the guys say, well, how do I do it? Well, then the second step comes about what I mentioned, to accepting and acknowledging that you've been through a lot. You've been through a long journey where you've acquired incredible number of experiences and skill sets, and that you need to actually value them, that they have a lot of value. And a lot of men undervalue themselves there. They see, okay, I can be an accountant. No, there's a lot more. And the trick is not just look at professional skill sets. There is also personal skill sets and talents and gifts, and a lot of things that actually people take for granted because either it comes natural to them, or I've always been like that. Even like what we discussed, coming from a very, very diverse multinational family background, having to navigate this multiple cultures in family background, people would never see it. Well, it does have no value. It has tremendous value. Has tremendous value because you will be much better at reading the room. You will be more sensitive to people's backgrounds and cultures. And we all work with people, right? So it's about claiming your value, but not just like a couple of professional skill sets. No, all of it. What makes you who you are? Are you a father? I mean, you're a father of 5. Wow. That's a lot of expertise there, right?
Four girls and a boy.
Well, you must know a lot about feminine, right? So I would say, so there's just about claiming it. Relationship, all men navigate multiple relationships, but it kind of goes without saying, but you have to claim it and see value in it. And by claiming all that, then we actually see how this purpose could become something tangible, something you can actually make money with. And making money is all about creating value, because money is just expression of value, right? So if you're creating value to other people, if they value what you do, there will be money. So it is about seeing that what you can do could be valuable. And that's where a lot of guys find it very puzzling, because they kind of taught in this paradigm that no, purpose is something you do as a hobby, but you work to pay the bills, and it has nothing to do with your purpose, right? And that you have your own skill sets, I don't know, as an accountant, or I don't know, as a logistics manager, and that's how you make money, and the purpose is something else. And when you retire, maybe you'll think about your purpose. No. The best, the gifts, the essence that you have, if you find a way to serve humanity with it, that's the best combination that will provide you with fulfillment, happiness, and income at the same time. So that's, I believe, that's what guys can really unleash at midlife and beyond.
Yeah, that's
Mm,
there's excuse me, there's so much that you said. It'd take us forever to unpack all the details of how, you can help people. But
mm,
at the end of the day, understanding why I'm here is this. It's like playing Monopoly. You're on the start block, right? You got to start somewhere. People that I talk to, they've said, well, they'll say, well, I've been trying to do personal development. I've been trying to change my life. I'm stuck in a rut. I've got all this stuff going on. And I'll ask them what they've been doing. And they're
mm,
like, they're drinking from a fire hose. They're doing way too
mm,
much. They're not focusing on any one specific area and then going from the start and working their way around the game of life, right? That you can't have it all. The people say, well, you can have your cake and eat it too. That term doesn't work that way. You have to be willing. You have to be a willing participant in your own life. You have to want to know what your why is. You have to acknowledge and accept, like you said, where you were, where you are, and where do you want to go, and be honest with yourself.
mm,
Write it down
mm,
or type it on a screen, whatever. Sometimes handwriting's better because pen to paper has been proven to sink in more, right? It's more connected to your brain. Um, and write down, what do you want? What makes you tick? What makes you happy? Quit writing down what makes everybody else happy, like you mentioned, right? It's what makes you happy. Because if you're not happy at your core, none of us, men or women, are really serving those around us, whether it's
mm.
family, whether it's somebody in a career, whether it's a business owner with their clients. We're literally on that hamster wheel. Our expectations of ourselves is always to please everybody else. And
Mm.
that's not a happy journey. You have to please yourself.
No,
So
no,
I
no.
like how you put that, right?
Mm,
You're people don't literally look at their skill sets. And you're right, there is a differentiation between professional and personal skill sets. We all have things like I think a well-rounded out person, in my opinion, over a long term, their personal skill sets, like I believe you mentioned, that intertwine within your professional skill sets, and they make you a more roundabout person. They make you more empathetic toward people and their challenges. If you've been able to accept your personal skills as being a good listener, that personal skill is going to navigate into your career. Now you're going to be a
mm.
good listener, and you could have somebody that's struggling and you're able to listen and then give them response if it's needed, right? So
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
so
And there
much.
are lots of research that shows that. Yeah, for instance, like people who come from big family like yourself, they tend to be, better aware, for instance, at work about multiple stakeholders and how to engage with them. Yeah, I actually did some research on that as well about how executives derail, for instance, in corporate career often, and those blind spots. And what I found that those blind spots often come from our family of origin, funny enough.
I agreed.
For instance, someone from a big family who has experience of dealing with multiple generations, right? They would be much better at seeing the bigger picture of multiple stakeholders engaging. Oh, not only in corporate, in business world as well. They will be much better at seeing, like, oh, there's all these connections and different stakeholder groups and how they can be integrated. Another interesting thing as well, I just want to say, because a lot of your listeners are entrepreneurs, right? As I understand,
Yeah, yeah.
or
A lot of, well,
aspiring.
they're not necessarily entrepreneurs or solopreneurs. I have a lot of people that are in high level careers too, right? That are
Okay.
in jobs, and so they're not necessarily an entrepreneur, but they're high level CEO, maybe as CFO,
Okay.
or
Okay.
right, or they're mid level
Mm-hmm.
management. And then I have people that are just common people working a 9 to 5 job that listen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all walks of life, people that are just
Mm.
looking for that elusive answer, right? That they think there's that secret sauce, that secret elixir that's going to just change their lives overnight, and them not realizing that the journey of life takes a long time. Like I look at my own
Mm.
personal life and I look at the fact of what I went through growing up. I was lucky. So maybe you can add to this too. Mom and dad workaholic, very successful entrepreneur, businessman. Mom, stay at home mom, listen to me, great listener. Dad, not a great listener to me, right? Was he a good listener to others? Yes, but to me personally. So when I became an adult, I was caught between this quagmire of, you know, do I really need to listen to you? And then part of my body was going, yes, you really need to listen. So it was a skill set
Good.
that I had to be a good listener is a skill set I've worked on since my 20s, and I'm in my late 50s now. So I literally consistently work on that. And one of the biggest compliments I've gotten from people is, oh, you're a great listener. I told you this months ago, years ago, and you remembered that. Well, yeah, well, you were talking to me. So to respect you, I listen to what you have to say. Right? It's not that, it's not like what are most people today when they listen? In, out, garbage in, garbage out, however you want to say it. They don't, because they're waiting to talk. They're not waiting to, they're not listening. They're not waiting. They're not listening to people at their core and then formulating a response if need be. Sometimes your purpose in life is just to listen. Not
to be there, to witness another human being, right?
But that's a practice skill.
Yeah,
because
but actually in your story, this is very typical where basically your mother was a role model of listening and being there and seeing you, being there for you. And she didn't have a career outside the home, right?
No.
And so
well, she did. She helped my dad with his business, but she only worked, let's say, 10 hours a week, and I would be in school. So, but when I was home, she was home, if that makes sense. So she did work part-time.
So she was there for you. She was there, she was present, she witnessed, she saw you, she listened to you. And a lot of guys, for instance, in this situation, for instance, let's put it this way, midlife, mid-career crisis, and he's thinking of maybe becoming a coach, for instance. Yeah, so that happens. So coach would be basically being a listener, not doing something for the other person, not going and running the business, but being witnessing their challenges, their stories, and helping them with questions, right? So facilitating, which would be like what your mom did, right? So a lot of guys would face a challenge that wouldn't that make me like feminine, or I was taught that that's not what men do. My role model was men do and do something else, and women do this, right? I mean, I'm exaggerating, but actually you'd be surprised how many guys carry that story about, oh, I shouldn't do that. I liked your story because you consciously went and you learned that skill set, right? And it didn't stop you that in your family, maybe man was not a great listener, right? Because that would maybe a story that by listening you will never make anything, right? You know, or someone needs to make money so that you could listen. I don't know, I'm just making it up here, but when I'm saying that a lot of guys are actually stopped by those subconscious stories, or what I said about aspiring entrepreneurs, when they want to really pivot, for instance, you were corporate, you want to go have your own thing, or you're doing one thing, I don't know, even in corporate you have career in one function and you want to change. A lot of guys are stopped by some sort of story which they're not even aware of. There is often subconscious about, we don't do that, we Hicks don't do that, right? Or we, you know, Smiths, we are not businessmen, or we are not, I don't know, we don't sell. That's actually a very common story. We don't sell, you know, I can't sell, so that's why I can't run my own business.
Well, they overlay rules on themselves. They overlay rules on themselves, their families, and then it becomes intergenerational, right? It becomes somebody's got to break the chain and realize that they don't have to live their story.
They're not even conscious about it.
Yeah,
they're not even conscious. So actually becoming aware that this is not a must. You can write your own rules, exactly like you said. Yeah. And that's a lot of work that's actually opens to us at midlife and mid-career, if we're willing to, let's say, question our assumptions about life and what people do and what people don't and what makes you successful, and trust. So if there is a heart calling that I want to be doing something else, and I seem to be admiring people who are doing that, and I seem to, my little voice says maybe you'll be good at it, trust it, that even if all the stories tell you that's not for men, or not for people in my family, not for people with my background, or my, I don't know, my color of eyes, trust this little voice. And if you have courage to examine your life and trust that you maybe, you know, you maybe have a better purpose, you know, be more happy and serve others in a better way, just trust this and see where it takes you. I would say it's really worth it.
I agree. So Anna, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Never settle for less.
Wow.
Never trust this story about, no, that's all there is, and forget about your aspirations and just accept like others accepted before you. No, do not trust this story. Even if it were true for some people in your family or before you, it's no longer true. Right now, there are so many opportunities, so self-sacrifice is not needed. So do not settle for less. Trust. If there is a fire, desire somewhere says there is more to life, there is more to life. Give a heck.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. It's such it's only right. It's only 4 words, but how powerful. Never settle for less. Isn't that a mantra that we should have on a t-shirt? We should have a plane pulling an advertisement across the sky, or you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It should be on billboards.
Yeah.
Never settle for less.
Why?
Right?
Why
Yeah. So,
settle?
but how many, I guarantee you though, I don't know the exact percentages, but it's directly tied to the percentages of how many people in North America. I'm not sure the Europe numbers, but that literally by the age of 65, they're either dead or dead broke. So 91% of people in North America. So 91, for those who want to visualize it, you ever been in a room of 100 people? 91 out of 100 people will be dead or dead broke at the age of 65. They've been caught, and many of those people, the reason they're dead or dead broke is because they're stuck. They're in that midlife stuck phase of their lives. They don't know how to get out of it. So then they get into addictions. They get into their health starts to suffer. They don't sleep properly. And sleep, as a side note, is the number one thing you need more than anything. It's the most important thing. Proper sleep. Their nutrition suffers. They die young. Or if they're dead, they're dead at 65, or if they're broke at 65, it's because they never ever got their finances in order because they didn't believe they were worthy to get their finances in order. They never ever had a mentor or a coach. So everything you talk about ties together is the fact of everything I teach, even everything in my book. My book isn't about finance. It talks a little bit about finance, but it's about the origin, the way that we've been talking. It's about what's your origin? What did you do with that origin? When you got to a certain point in your life, what did you do to pivot and change? For me, that it was a profound loss of my granddaughter, right? And that triggered in me to get off that hamster wheel that I was stuck on, even though I didn't even realize I was stuck on it. Because I was coaching people already for years on how to live a purposeful life, but I had lost my own purpose. So I say this to people listening or watching: you're going to have the hills and valleys. You're going to have the valleys of despair that are going to still, even when you think you've got it made, you got it all laid out, that you're going to hit once in a while. Then I make sure, though, that whoever, including myself, have things that will trigger us back to the reality of life, that we still got so much life to live, that we don't have to be stuck, that we can still serve others by serving ourselves first and foremost, for not beating ourselves up. Like, if you're beating yourself up about your life, honestly sit and reflect on the good that's happened in your life. And if you can find good, anchor on that and start building from that. Right? Leave the garbage behind, because your past does not have to be indicative of your future ever.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's a midlife is a part where you can absolutely release the past and take what you want and leave the rest and travel lighter.
Oh, exactly. So our time is almost up, and I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please tell the listeners what's the best way they can reach you?
Well, the best way is actually go to my website, which is the same as my name, urnova.com. And I would recommend, if you're a man and you're at midlife situation or mid-career situation where you don't feel entirely happy, the best thing is to watch my masterclass about that. And you would find in my website as well as free training. It's 45 minutes, really worth your time. We've discussed some of it here, but there is more there. And there's also real examples of 3 men, real men, who were stuck and unhappy, and how they actually rediscovered and reinvented themselves at mid-career and midlife. So you can do that too. Yeah, that would be the best way to start.
I will make sure, for those new to the show, to give a heck, you can go to giveaheck.com and go to the podcast part of the website, which is at the top. It's labeled. You'll see a picture of Anna, and below there will be abbreviated show notes, which will list all her information she just brought up, her website, her social media contacts. I'll make sure that are in there, as well as You can, if there's some part of the show that you really liked and you don't want to have to listen to the whole thing, which is fine, there'll actually be a timeline on there, which will specifically break down specific conversations and topics that we talked about. So then you can go and look and say, oh, at 23 minutes, they were talking about, that's where I want to go. So you also have that as a tool as well at giveaheck.com. Again, just go into the podcast area, you'll see a picture of Anna, and below there will be a breakdown of the episode for those that want to, read that, as well as, again, the social media links for yourself, myself, and then a timeline breakdown. So any last words before I wrap up the show, Anna?
No, thank you for having me on your show, Dwight, and congratulations. Did you say it's 198?
I think I'm pretty sure you're going to be episode 198. I believe I have a couple other shows I got to submit, but I believe when I created your folder, because I have folders on all the people that are on the show where I break down and do research on them, and I believe you're number 198. So your episode will be a eye opener for men. Obviously, there's women out there that could possibly be stuck themselves. So they can reach out as well.
Yeah, they can reach out as well. The masterclass will absolutely fit. And I have great referrals. I have great coaches who specifically work to help midlife women and specific mid-career women. So if the women need referral, I'll be happy to refer, because women have somewhat different challenges. So it's really good to work with someone who is specializing. But Dwight, I just wanted to say that I know there's only very small percentage of podcasts are making it beyond 100th episode, and you're approaching 200s. Well done, man. And keep going. Okay.
Thank you. There's most podcasts, the new stats came out, don't make it past 8 episodes. So yeah,
look at you.
I did it as a passion. I started it during the pandemic to help people, right? Because there was so many people trapped in their homes, feeling helpless and wondering if what their purpose was, because there was so much fear and trials and tribulations going on in their lives. And this gives people the ability to listen to somebody and what they've gone through, and that they're circumventing it, and they're still working on their lives, the rest of their lives, but along the way they're helping a bunch of people. They're creating a community of like-minded people. And really, at the end of the day, your community of like-minded people, for those listening, watching, doesn't have to be big, but it has to be fruitful. It has to be fruitful in the essence that you have to like what you feel, they have to like what they feel. You have synergies. You're not always going to agree, but that old saying, you're going to agree to disagree and still respect one another and walk away. And next time you see each other, that's just water under the bridge, right? You move forward in life. So I wish for every person that's listening to this to find their purpose. If you believe this episode can be of use to others, please share it with them, right? If you enjoyed it, go in and give a comment and literally rank the episode, because it helps the services get it out to more people, just like social media. Podcasting has an algorithm. So I appreciate that. But thank you again for being on the show. I'm going to wrap it up now, and I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much.
You bet. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck. And I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck.
Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.